Hey guys, what do y'all say we go ahead and we go to chapter 9? Now, for the first time in 12 years of his life, Jonas felt separate, different. He remembered what the chief elder had said, that his training would be alone and apart. But his training had not yet begun, and already, upon leaving the auditorium, he felt apartness. Holding the folder she had given him, he made his way through the throng, looking for his family unit and for Asher. People moved aside for him. They watched him. He thought he could hear whispers. Ash, he called, spotting his friend near a row of bicycles. Ride back with me. Sure, Asher smiled, his usual smile, friendly and familiar. But Jonas felt a moment of hesitation from his friend, an uncertainty. Congratulations, Asher said. You too, Jonas replied. It was really funny when she told about the smacks. You got more applause than most anybody else. The other new 12s clustered nearby, placing their folders carefully into their carrying containers on the backs of their bikes. In each dwelling tonight, they would be studying instructions for the beginning of their training. And each night for years, the children had memorized the required lessons for school, often yawning with boredom. Tonight, they would all begin eagerly to memorize the rules for their adult assignments. Congratulations, Asher, someone called. Then that hesitation again. You too, Jonas. Asher and Jonas responded with congratulations to their group mates. Jonas saw his parents watching him from the place where their bicycles were waiting. Lily had already been strapped into her seat. He waved. They waved back, smiling, but he noticed that Lily was watching him solemnly, her thumb in her mouth. He rode directly to his dwelling, exchanging only small jokes and unimportant remarks with Asher. See you in the morning, recreation director, he called, dismounting by the door as Asher continued on. Right. See ya, Asher called back. Once again, there was a moment when things just weren't quite the same, weren't quite as they had been throughout the long friendship. Perhaps he'd imagined it, and things couldn't change with Asher. The evening meal was quieter than usual. Lily chattered about her plans for volunteer work, where she began. She said at the nurturing center, since she was already an expert at feeding Gabriel. I know, she added quickly when her father gave her a warning glance. I won't mention his name. I know I'm not supposed to know his name. I can't wait for tomorrow to come, she said happily. Jonas sighed uneasily. I can, he murmured. You've been greatly honored, his mother said. Your father and I are very proud. It's the most important job in the community, father said. But just the other night, you said that the job of making assignments was the most important. Mother nodded. This is different. It's not a job. I never thought, I never expected. There's only one receiver. But the chief elder said that they have the final selection before, and it failed. What is she talking about? Both of his parents hesitated, and finally his father described the previous selection. It was very much as it is today, Jonas. The same suspense, as 111 had been passed over when the assignments were given, and then the announcement when they singled out the one. Jonas interrupted. What was his name? His mother replied, her, not his. It was a female. But we are never to speak the name or use it again for a new child. Jonas was shocked. A name designated not to be spoken indicated the highest degree of disgrace. What happened to her? He asked nervously. But his parents looked blank. We don't know, his father said uncomfortably. We never saw her again. Excuse me. A silence fell over the room and they looked at each other. Finally, his mother, rising from the table, said, You've been greatly honored, Jonas. Greatly honored. Alone in his sleeping room, prepared for bed, Jonas opened his folder at last. Some of the other 12s had noticed how he'd been given folders thick with printed pages. He imagined Benjamin, the scientific male in the group, beginning to read pages of rules and instructions with relish. He pictured Fiona smiling her gentle smile as she bent over a list of duties and methods that she'd be required to learn in the days to come. But his own folder was startlingly close to empty. Inside, there was only one single printed page, and he read it twice. Jonas, receiver of memory. Number 1. Excuse me again, guys. Must be a long day. Number 1. Go immediately at the end of the school hours each day to the annex entrance behind the House of the Old and present yourself to the attendant. Number 2. Go immediately to your dwelling at the conclusion of training hours each day. Number 3. From this moment, you are exempted from all rules governing rudeness. You may ask any question of any citizen and you will receive answers. Number 4. Do not discuss your training with any other members of the community, including parents and elders. Number 5. From this moment, you are prohibited from dream telling. Number 6. Except for illness or injury unrelated to your training, do not apply for medication. Number 7. You are not permitted to apply for release. And number 8. You may lie. Jonas was stunned. What would happen to his friendships? His mindless hours of playing ball or riding his bike along the river? Those have been happy and vital times for him. Were they completely taken from him now? The simple logistic instructions, where to go and when, were expected. Every 12 had to be told, of course, where and how and when to report for training, but he was a little dismayed by a schedule left no time, apparently, for recreation. The exemption from rudeness startled him. Reading it again, however, he realized that it didn't compel him to be rude, it just simply allowed him the option. He was quite certain he would never take advantage of it, and he was so thoroughly accustomed to courtesy within the community that the thought of asking another citizen an intimate question about calling someone's attention to an area of weakness was unnerving. The prohibition of dream telling, he thought, would not be a real problem. He dreamed so rarely that dream telling didn't come easily to him anyways, and he was glad to be excused from it. He wondered briefly, though, how to deal with it at the morning meal. What if he did dream? Should he simply tell his family unit, as he did so often anyway, that he hadn't? But that would still be a lie. Still, the final rule said, well, he wasn't quite ready to think about the final rule on the page. The restriction of medication unnerved him. Medication was always available to citizens, even children through their parents. When he crushed his finger on the door, he had quickly, gasping into the speaker, notified his mother. She had hastily requisitioned relief of pain medication, which had promptly been delivered to his dwelling. And almost immediately, the excruciating pain in his hand had diminished to a throb, which was now all he could recall of the experience. Reading rule number 6, he realized that the crushed finger fell into the category of unrelated to training. So if that ever happened again, he could quite certain it wouldn't, but he had been very careful near every door since the accident. He could still receive medication. The pill he took now each morning was also unrelated to training, so he could continue to receive his pill. But he remembered uneasily what the chief elder had said about pain that would come with his training. She had called it indescribable. Jonas swallowed hard, trying without success to imagine what such pain must be like, with no medication at all. But it was beyond his comprehension. He felt no reaction to rule number 7 at all. It had never occurred to him that, under any circumstances ever, that he might apply for release. Finally, he steeled himself to read the final rule again. He had been trained since earliest childhood, since his earliest learning of language, never to lie. It was an integral part of the learning process of precise speech. Once when he had been 4, he had said, just prior to midday meal at school, "I'm starving." Immediately, he had been taken aside for a brief, private lesson on language precision. He was not starving, it was pointed out. He was hungry. No one in the community was starving. No one in the community was starving, had ever been starving, would ever be starving. To say starving was to speak a lie, an unintentional lie, of course, but the reason for precision of language was to ensure that unintentional lies were never uttered. Did he understand that? That they asked him? And he had. He had never, within his memory, been tempted to lie. Astrid did not lie. Lily did not lie. His parents did not lie. No one did, unless. Now Jonas had a thought that he had never had before. This new thought was frightening. What if others, adults, had, upon becoming 12s, received in their instructions the same terrifying sentence? What if they had all been instructed, you may lie? His mind reeled, now empowered to ask questions of utmost rudeness. And promised answers? He could, conceivably, though it was almost unimaginable, ask someone, some adult, his father perhaps, do you lie? But he would have no way of knowing if the answer he received was true. All right, guys, let's look at the questions for chapter number 9. What do you say? Oh, just one big question. In this chapter, Jonas receives his rule. What do you think about each rule? What do you say we go back and we look at those again? So the rules were, number 1, go immediately at the end of the school hours each day to the annex entrance behind the house of the old and present yourself to the attendant. That's like having a job. Just got to go after school, right? Number 2, go immediately to your dwelling at the conclusion of training hours each day. And you go straight home. No time to hang out. What do you think of that? Number 3, from this moment, you are exempted from rules governing rudeness. You may ask any question of any citizen and you will receive answers. What do you think of that rule? I kind of like that one. Number 4, do not discuss your training with any other members of the community, including parents and elders. Number 5, from this moment, you are prohibited from dream telling. Number 6, except for illness or injury unrelated to your training, do not apply for medication. Number 7, you are not permitted to apply for release. And number 8, you may lie. Thank you again, guys, and I will see y'all on chapter 10. Later.